Ladies and gentlemen, this is Lucas with Habits of Holiness, and I want to ask you a question. Have you ever sat down to pray and realized that you don't know what to pray for? You don't even know where to start? I know that I definitely have, and this can be really frustrating. You feel like you should be spending time with God, and once you actually get around to doing it, you freeze up and you don't even know what to say. Today, I want to tell you about a short 4-step method of prayer that you can use the next time you sit down to pray and you don't really know what to say. Now, wait. Before you go off saying, I don't need anybody to tell me how to pray, especially not some guy in a floral shirt, I want to remind you of 3 examples from church history of people using these as examples for their prayer. The first example is the Lord's Prayer. In Matthew 6, Jesus himself says, pray like this. Now, what Jesus is not saying is recite this prayer over and over verbatim. What he's doing is he's giving his followers a framework for prayer that then they can go forward in their personal prayer time and build off of his example, following the pattern that Jesus lays out. The second example that I want to talk about is the Book of Common Prayer. And this book was originally published in 1549. And so what that means is for almost 500 years, Christians have been using this book as a guide and a resource for their personal prayer lives. The third example that I want to talk about is A Diary of Private Prayer by John Bailey. This book has been used for almost 100 years by Christians like myself who have used it in the morning and in the evening and have been led by John Bailey through these prayers. What I love about this book and about the Book of Common Prayer is that they often remind me to pray for things that I otherwise would never think of praying. Here, let me read you an example from John Bailey's A Diary of Private Prayer. Throughout the ages, you have been the Lord and giver of life, the source of all knowledge and the fountain of all goodness. The patriarchs like Abraham trusted you and were not put to shame. The prophets like Isaiah sought you and you put your words on their lips. The psalmists like David rejoiced in you and you were present in their songs. The apostles like Peter waited for you and were filled with your Holy Spirit. The martyrs like Stephen called upon you and you were with them in the flames. This poor soul called and was heard by the Lord and was saved from every trouble. Isn't that beautiful? I don't know about you, but my prayers don't normally sound like that. I can't concisely go through the entire history of God's people in just a few sentences. But that's what you get with books like A Diary of Private Prayer and A Book of Common Prayer. And now that we've established that using a pattern and a framework for prayer is normal and has been encouraged throughout church history, I want to talk to you about a short 4-step method of prayer that you can use next time you don't know what to pray for. The 4-step pattern of prayer is ACTS, and I can't take credit for it. The first time I heard of this was, I think, in high school, so it might have been my youth pastor, it might have been someone on a retreat, but it's very simple, and it's adoration, confession, thankfulness, and supplication. The reason why I love this pattern of prayer so much is that it puts me in a posture of humility. Notice how supplication, which is a fancy word for asking God for things, is the very last thing on the list. This means that before I ever ask God for anything, I've taken time to adore him and acknowledge how great he is. I've taken time to confess my sin and my brokenness. I've taken time to thank God specifically for all the ways that he has blessed me and all of the miracles that he's done. And finally, by the time I get around to asking God for anything, hopefully I've come to the point where I realize that I'm not asking God for stuff because I deserve it or because God owes me. But I'm asking God for these things because I need God. Like Jesus says in John 15:5, apart from Jesus, I can do nothing. So after I take time to acknowledge who God is, confess my sin, and thank him for what he's done, then I can humbly ask God for help because I need it. The next time that you go to pray and you don't know what to pray for, consider using this framework. It's very simple. You can use it in 30 seconds. You can pray for 5 minutes. You can pray for 5 hours. But I pray that it will be as fruitful for you as it has been for me. Thank you so much for watching. This is Lucas Hagen with habitsofholiness.com. Until next time.